400 meters long, 59 meters wide, 200,000 tons, light and fueled. The Ever Given had a capacity of over 20,000 TEU. On March 23, 2021, at 0740 local time, it turned sideways in the Suez. It blocked 369 ships at peak Q and froze roughly 12% of world trade for 6 days. Estimates ran to billions per day. Numbers like $9.6 billion in daily trade delayed. Wind did not break the system. Efficiency did. The very scale that slashed cost per box created a single point of failure: hydrodynamic, geographic, and financial. Here's the counterintuitive destination. Container shipping worked so well, it made itself fragile. A pilot was aboard. Tugs were ready. The Suez had been widened in 2015, though not the single-lane stretch where this happened. And still, a few minutes of crosswind and bank effect were enough. Because in a shallow, narrow channel at 8 to 13 knots, physics narrows your margin to inches. The question is, what broke first? The answer isn't where most people look. March 23, 0740. Northbound convoy, south of kilometer mark 151. What moved the rudder wasn't the wheel. First, squat and bank effect. In shallow water, pressure under a moving hull drops. The ship sinks a little, and turns behave strangely near banks. At 12 knots with a deep draft hull, squat can add decimeters to draft. In the Suez, that can be the difference between clear and contact. Second, windage. A 400-meter container ship stacks a 50-plus meter wall to the sky. In 30-40 knot gusts, that's a sail. Add rudder wash and tugs, and your pivot point shifts forward. The stern swings wider, exactly where bank suction is strongest. Now, the stakes. Northbound convoys slot through booked time windows, pilots aboard, engines set to maintain steerage. The megaship era, Maersk EEE, MSC Golson class, Ever Given's 20,000-plus TEU, drove cost per container down by double digits, but it also concentrated risk into 5 straits: Suez, Panama, Malacca, Bab el-Mandeb, Hormuz. Meanwhile, just-in-time inventory shrank. In 2020, the U.S. inventory-to-sales ratio fell toward 1.1. Buffers disappeared. Put those together, and one pivoting hull can move the entire calendar. So what actually broke first on March 23rd wasn't a line or a tug. It was an assumption. That margin existed. Here's the first payoff. The rudder can command, but in a banked channel the water can ignore it. Pilots aboard, Suez Canal Authority in control, owner, Suez Kyson, operator, Evergreen, Salvors, Smith, Boskalis. Every stakeholder was competent. The system still set them up to fail. Now watch the cascade start. The first fix made the second problem worse. And that's where most analysis stops. Track plots show a slight starboard shear, then a correcting port rudder, then loss of lateral control. Gusts near 40 knots hit broadside. The pivot point moved forward. The stern drifted to port. Low pressure between hull and bank pulled the stern harder than the rudder could push. The bow bit into clay on the east bank. The stern swung and kissed the west. Ahead, power in shallow water accelerates squat. Prop wash can deepen the stern sink. Tugs on the quarter pulled. That increased yaw moment, but also pinned the bow harder. Dredging started, removing tens of thousands of cubic meters from the bow pocket. The fix was right. Free the bow. The cost: the stern lost its only brace against drift. By day 2, over 300 ships stacked up north and south. AIS pings crowded the Red Sea. Cargo owners faced delays. Insurers eyeing general average watched the meter run. The moon added leverage. A spring tide window on March 28-29 offered centimeters that matter. Heavy tugs like ALP Guard and Carlo Magno built a combined bollard pull over 400 tons. At 04:30 on the 29th, the stern moved meters. By 15:05, Ever Given was free. 6 days. Hundreds of ships. One choke point. But the real damage wouldn't hit until weeks later, thousands of miles away, because containers move on calendars, not maps. If you can see where this is going, you're ahead of it. Now we trace the mechanism that turned minutes of wind into months of congestion. Asia-Europe services run on fixed weekly loops. Ningbo, Yantian, Singapore, Suez, Rotterdam, Felixstowe, Hamburg. Block a week, and 11 of those loops stack in the queue. European terminals schedule berths by hour. 3 megaships in a day will jam a yard built for one. A yard at 80% density slows. At 95, it locks. Every extra shuffle adds minutes per box. Then gates choke. Appointment slots vanish. Rail windows miss. Chassis supply runs thin. This is the bullwhip. A small timing error at the source amplifies as each layer buffers wrong. Spot rates on Asia-Europe lanes spiked in Q2 2021. Some lanes tripled versus 2019. Contract cargo waited. Spot buyers paid to jump the queue or route around the Cape of Good Hope. The Cape adds roughly 4,000 nautical miles and 9 to 12 days. At 60-80 tons or day fuel, that's tens of thousands in bunkers. Meanwhile, inventory shifted from shelves to ships. Balance sheets didn't care. Customers did. A week late into Rotterdam cascaded into missed rail in Duisburg, missed DC slots in Venlo, missed promos in Paris. APM Terminals Rotterdam, PSA Antwerp, Felixstowe, each posted advisories. The queue had legs. First order, late ships. Second order, yard gridlock. Third order, empty container imbalance in Asia. By May, exporters in Ningbo and Yantian faced shortages. Sailings blanked to recover schedules. Why didn't carriers simply slow down and spread arrivals? Because contracts, cranes, and canals don't stretch equally. Utilization targets, high 90s, turn a system efficient, then brittle. Slack is a cost until it's lifeboats. SCA detained the vessel. Claims floated near $900 million before Suez settled in July 2021. All that from centimeters of draft and knots of wind. If you can already see the problem forming, you're ahead of where this went. Subscribe if you want more of these deep dives. We're just getting started. Here's how it actually worked. Now the exact mechanics, bank effect, squat, pivot point, and why more tugs aren't the answer. We'll build it from the hull out. Watch the forces add and subtract in real time. Start with geometry. See on-screen specs for canal width, depth, draft, beam, and under keel clearance. These numbers set the margins. That clearance leaves room until speed. Squat grows roughly with speed squared in confined water. Near a bank, flow accelerates on the tight side, pressure drops, the stern is sucked toward the wall. Rudder generates a moment proportional to flow and angle. Suction adds a counter moment that can dominate at small clearances. Windage adds a sail force acting at a high center of pressure roughly midships to high. At 35-40 knots, it's material. At speed, the pivot point moves forward from midships, changing how stern movements translate to heading. A tug on the quarter applies force aft of pivot, creating yaw but also side load that can increase bank suction. Removing bow material reduces bow friction and frees rotation, but until stern clearance increases, yaw accelerates. Spring tide adds centimeters to UKC everywhere. Ballast and trimming can bias stern clearance. Reducing a head power lowers squat, but risks losing steerage. Too little flow and the rudder dies. The window is narrow. Enough water under keel and over rudder, enough tug pull, and enough tide, all at once. On the 29th, heavy tugs pulled at high tide with the bow lightened. The stern finally cleared meters, not inches. Why not just add tugs? Because line angles, pivot point, and bank suction add vector math, not horsepower. Suez isn't uniform. Single-lane segments constrain options. You can't just yaw into the other lane. Pilots advise, masters command, SCA controls the waterway. Decisions flow through doctrine written before 20 kTEU existed. Margins didn't vanish, they were consumed by scale. A 2% geometry change erased them. The ship didn't fail, the math did. By 2021, well over 100 ships exceeded 18,000 TEU. Alliances filled them to keep unit costs low. Hub and spoke amplified peaks. 3 feeders per mainline arrival equals 3 times the missynchronization. Weekly strings, crane gangs, union shifts, and convoy slots. None scale elastically with one late week. Declaring general average spreads salvage cost. It doesn't move a single box faster. And that's the paradox. Efficiency gains were real, until one canal turned them off. Now see what that triggered downstream. Rotterdam's yards approached critical density by early April. Crane productivity dropped minutes per box. Felixstowe posted gate hour advisories. Truck turn times stretched beyond 90 minutes. Hamburg's rail slots filled. Overflow turned to road, adding cost and CO2. Even LA Long Beach felt echoes as empties arrived out of phase with import surges. Specific SKUs, electronics and furniture, missed promotions dated to week 18 and 19 of 2021. Container prices spiked. Charter rates for 8,500 TEU ships hit multi-year highs. Cargo claims processed through GA took months. Ever Given detained until July settlement. Shippers added safety days to lead times. Some shifted to air for high-margin goods at 5 to 10x cost. Carriers blanked sailings to re-sync. Reliability metrics cratered below 40% on some trades. Talks surfaced. Deeper canals, bigger tugs, more lanes. None fixed the calendar math alone. Congestion raised costs. Higher costs shifted bookings. Shifted bookings recongested new nodes. By June, some Asian exporters waited weeks for empties. Factory yards became storage. Transport costs bled into shelf prices with a lag measured in months. A week of canal downtime retimed a season. Then the longer arc started. Just in time quietly bent toward just in case. Some buyers split lanes, added 10-20% buffer stock or dual-sourced SKUs. The efficiency engine forced resilience math back onto the table. Next, what the new equilibrium looks like and what it costs. Post-2021, the frontier shifted. A few percent higher landed cost for materially lower schedule risk. SCA announced further widening, deepening in segments. Helpful, but not decisive. Order books still leaned large, 14K, 24K TEU, because economies of scale still rule calm seas. Alternatives, Arctic routes, Trans-Eurasian Rail, exist but don't match Suez capacity or reliability. Mitigations got practical. Weather windows, speed tweaks before choke points, ballast plans for crosswinds. CFD-informed pilotage aids and bank-effect advisors entered bridge toolkits. Insurance priced the lesson. Some contracts added force majeure and buffer clauses by mid-2022. The Ever Given didn't expose incompetence. It exposed a boundary condition. What broke first was slack, then time. Then trust in just-in-time. Why wind? It tipped the hydrodynamic balance. Why tugs? Helpful, not sovereign. Why 6 days? Because calendars cure physics. What stuck? Modest buffers, smarter arrivals, and an industry newly humble about choke points. Efficiency isn't free. It's a loan against variance, and variance always collects. This wasn't a freak accident. It was a stress test the system handed itself. The strength, scale, and cadence became the weakness at the narrowest point. Anywhere you see perfect flow with no buffer, you're looking at a scheduled failure. The lesson travels farther than the canal. Subscribe if this is your kind of story. We cover megastructures and systems like this every week. And if you were delayed by the Suez Jam in March 2021, tell us what it changed for you. What scenario should we explore next? Share your ideas below. You've been watching Ifverse, where imagination meets possibility. See you in our next reality.